The town of Iron Creek had grown accustomed to the steady ring of hammer on anvil that echoed from Ezra Steele's blacksmith shop from dawn to dusk, 6 days a week. But in the autumn of 1888, the familiar rhythm would be interrupted by an encounter that challenged everything the Arizona Territory believed about beauty, worth, and the scars that mark both our bodies and our hearts. Ezra had run the only blacksmith shop for 50 miles in any direction, serving ranchers, miners, and travelers who needed everything from horseshoes to wagon repairs. At 29, he was built like the iron he worked, broad shoulders, powerful arms, and hands that could shape metal with the same delicacy other men used to handle fine china. His skill with forge and anvil was legendary throughout the territory, but so was his solitary nature and his refusal to attend any social gathering that might require him to remove his shirt or roll up his sleeves beyond his forearms. The reason for Ezra's reclusiveness was written in scar tissue across his chest, arms, and the left side of his face, the permanent reminder of the fire that had claimed his family's homestead when he was 16. He had survived by diving into the root cellar, but not before the burning roof beam had fallen across his body, leaving him marked forever with the price of being the only survivor. For 13 years, Ezra had lived with the certainty that no woman would ever see past his disfigurement to the man beneath. He threw himself into his work, building a reputation that brought customers from across the territory, but always keeping his distance from anything that might require him to reveal the extent of his scars. That isolation was about to be challenged by a woman whose own scars ran even deeper than his. The first time Ezra saw Abigail Warren, she was standing in the shadows outside his shop, her face turned away from the morning sun, and her right hand pressed against her left cheek in a gesture that spoke of old pain and careful concealment. She wore a simple gray dress and a wide-brimmed bonnet that cast her features in shadow, but there was something in her posture, proud yet defensive, that caught his attention immediately. "Excuse me," Abigail called out, her voice clear but cautious. "Are you Mr. Steele, the blacksmith?" "I am," Ezra replied, setting down his hammer and wiping his hands on his leather apron. "What can I do for you, ma'am?" Abigail stepped slightly closer, still keeping her left side turned away from him. "I need to hire someone to repair the hinges on my cabin door and perhaps make a new latch for the window shutters. I'm living about 3 miles east of town, in the old Henderson place." Ezra knew the property, a small homestead that had been abandoned for years after the previous owner died. It was barely more than a shack, really, isolated and in poor repair. Not the kind of place a respectable woman would choose to live unless she had no other options. "I can ride out tomorrow morning to take a look," Ezra offered. "Give you an estimate on the work needed." "That's very kind, but—" Abigail hesitated, then seemed to gather her courage. "I should warn you, Mr. Steele. I'm not— that is, my appearance might be startling to some people. I wouldn't want you to be uncomfortable." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning that Ezra understood immediately. Whatever had happened to Abigail Warren, it had left marks that went beyond simple physical injury. It had left her convinced that her appearance would be disturbing to others. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. "Ma'am," Ezra said gently, rolling up his right sleeve to reveal the intricate pattern of burn scars that covered his forearm like a map of old suffering. "I think I understand something about appearances that might startle people." Abigail's eyes widened as she took in the extent of his scarring, but instead of the revulsion or pity Ezra had learned to expect, he saw something different in her expression: recognition, understanding, and a flicker of relief that she wasn't the only person in the world who carried visible reminders of past trauma. "You're very kind to share that with me," Abigail said quietly. Most people prefer not to be reminded that terrible things can happen to anyone. Most people are fortunate enough not to have learned that lesson personally," Ezra replied. "But some of us carry our education on our skin." For the first time since she'd approached his shop, Abigail turned her face fully toward Ezra, allowing him to see what she had been so carefully hiding. The left side of her face bore the unmistakable marks of severe burns, scars that ran from her temple to her jaw, pulling at her skin and giving her features an asymmetrical cast that spoke of tremendous pain and difficult healing. But what struck Ezra most powerfully wasn't the scarring itself, but the courage it had taken for her to reveal it to someone she barely knew. And that's when everything changed forever. "How did it happen?" Ezra asked, his voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone who understood that some stories were too painful for casual telling. Abigail was quiet for a long moment, clearly debating how much to reveal. "A cooking accident," she said finally. "Hot grease caught fire, and I wasn't quick enough to get away. This was 2 years ago in Colorado. My husband." She paused, then continued with visible effort. "My husband found my appearance too disturbing to live with. He had the marriage annulled and suggested I find somewhere to live where my face wouldn't upset people." The casual cruelty of the story hit Ezra like a physical blow. A man had abandoned his injured wife because her scars made him uncomfortable, then convinced her that her appearance was the problem rather than his own shallow character. "Your husband was an idiot," Ezra said bluntly, then caught himself. "I apologize, ma'am. That wasn't my place to say." "No, you're right," Abigail said, and to Ezra's surprise, she smiled. A lopsided smile because of the scar tissue, but genuine nonetheless. "He was an idiot. It just took me 2 years to realize it." Over the next several days, as Ezra worked on repairs to Abigail's cabin, an unlikely friendship began to develop between two people who had learned to live with society's discomfort with visible difference. Abigail proved to be intelligent, well-read, and possessed of a dry sense of humor that emerged once she realized Ezra wasn't going to treat her like a tragic figure who needed constant sympathy. "You know," Abigail said on his 3rd day of work, as she brought him water and watched him rehang her front door, "you're the first person in 2 years who's looked at me without that expression people get when they're trying not to stare at something disturbing." Ezra paused in his work to consider her observation. "Maybe because I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of that look. It's not fun being treated like a medical curiosity or something to be pitied." "Exactly." Abigail's agreement was enthusiastic. "I'm still the same person I was before the accident. I still read books and have opinions and laugh at funny stories. But people see the scars first and assume they tell the whole story about who I am. But you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet." As Ezra finished the repairs and prepared to return to town, Abigail made an offer that surprised them both. "Mr. Steele, I've been thinking. You mentioned that you do all your own cooking and cleaning, and I know that can't be easy with your demanding work schedule. I'm a very good cook. It's actually how I got burned, trying to make a complicated dish for my husband's business associates, and I don't mind housework. Would you consider, that is, would you be interested in hiring me to manage your household in exchange for room and board?" Ezra stared at her, trying to process the implications of what she was suggesting. "You want to work as my housekeeper?" "I want to work as your partner in managing a household," Abigail corrected. "Someone who takes care of the domestic side of things so you can focus on your blacksmithing. I need a place to live and work that will provide me with some security, and you need someone who can handle the day-to-day tasks that interfere with your business." It seems like a practical arrangement. The offer was logical, mutually beneficial, and completely scandalous by frontier standards. An unmarried woman living in the same house as an unmarried man, even in a purely business arrangement, would cause enough gossip to damage both their reputations permanently. "Abigail," Ezra said carefully, "you realize what people would say about such an arrangement?" Abigail's laugh was bitter, but not entirely without humor. "Mr. Steele, my reputation was destroyed the day my husband had our marriage annulled and told everyone in Colorado that living with me was more than any man should be expected to bear. I'm more concerned with practical survival than with respectability." Ezra considered the proposal from every angle, weighing the benefits against the social costs. The truth was, he did need help with household management. His focus on his work meant that he often forgot to eat proper meals. His cabin was functional but hardly comfortable, and the loneliness of his isolated life had begun to weigh on him more heavily with each passing year. More than that, he recognized in Abigail Warren a kindred spirit, someone who had been marked by circumstances beyond their control and had learned to navigate a world that often treated physical difference as moral failing. If we did this, Ezra said slowly, it would have to be a genuine partnership. Equal say in household decisions, fair division of responsibilities, mutual respect for each other's privacy and independence. Of course, Abigail agreed immediately. I'm not looking for charity or rescue, Mr. Steele. I'm looking for a working arrangement with someone who sees me as a capable adult rather than a damaged woman who needs to be hidden away. Wait, don't miss this crucial detail. The arrangement that began as a practical business partnership evolved over the following months into something neither Ezra nor Abigail had expected, a comfortable domestic life that felt more natural and satisfying than either had experienced in their previous attempts at conventional relationships. Abigail proved to be not just an excellent cook and housekeeper, but a thoughtful companion who took genuine interest in Ezra's work and offered insights that improved both his techniques and his business practices. She suggested modifications to his workshop layout that increased efficiency, helped him develop better relationships with customers through her superior social skills, and even assisted with complex metalwork projects that required precision and delicate touch. Ezra, in turn, provided Abigail with something she had never experienced even in her marriage: genuine partnership and respect. He consulted with her on business decisions, valued her opinions, and treated her as an intellectual equal rather than a domestic servant or decorative accessory. Most importantly, neither of them felt the need to hide their scars when they were together. Ezra worked without his shirt in the summer heat, his burn-marked torso visible as he labored at the forge. Abigail wore her hair pulled back and chose clothing that prioritized comfort over concealment. For the first time in years, both of them could simply exist without constantly managing other people's discomfort with their appearance. "Do you ever wonder what we'd have been like if we'd met before our accidents?" Abigail asked one evening as they sat on the cabin's front porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Ezra considered the question seriously. "I think we might not have understood each other as well. Going through something that changes how the world sees you, it teaches you things about what really matters that you can't learn any other way. Like the difference between people who see scars and people who see the person carrying them," Abigail agreed. "Like understanding that strength isn't about avoiding damage, but about continuing to build something meaningful after you've been damaged," Ezra added. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of visitors, a delegation from town led by Reverend Patterson and several of the community's most prominent citizens. Their expressions made it clear that this wasn't a social call. "Mr. Steele," Reverend Patterson began with obvious discomfort, "we need to discuss the situation you've created by housing Miss Warren in your home. The arrangement is causing considerable concern among decent people in the community. What you're seeing now is nothing compared to what happens next." Ezra stood slowly, his massive frame imposing even without any aggressive intent. "Reverend, what situation would that be?" "I have a business partner who helps manage my household in exchange for room and board. It's a practical arrangement that benefits both of us." "Mr. Steele, surely you can see how inappropriate it appears for an unmarried woman to be living in your home," Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, interjected. "People are beginning to talk about what kind of activities might be taking place under your roof." Abigail stepped forward, her chin lifted with dignity, despite the way several of the visitors instinctively averted their eyes from her scarred face. "Mrs. Henderson, I appreciate your concern for my moral welfare, but I'm perfectly capable of managing my own virtue. Mr. Steele has been nothing but respectful and professional in our arrangement." "That may be true," Reverend Patterson said, "but appearances matter in a community. The scandal of your living situation reflects poorly on all of us." "The only scandal I see," Ezra said quietly, "is a group of supposedly Christian people who are more concerned with gossip than with the fact that two productive members of your community have found a way to help each other live with dignity and mutual respect." The confrontation continued for several more minutes, with the delegation making increasingly clear that the community's tolerance for the arrangement was coming to an end. Either Ezra and Abigail would need to formalize their relationship through marriage, or Abigail would need to find somewhere else to live. After the visitors left, Ezra and Abigail sat in silence on their porch, both understanding that their comfortable partnership was being threatened by other people's discomfort with anything that didn't fit conventional social expectations. "I'm sorry," Abigail said finally. "I never meant for my presence here to cause problems for your business or your standing in the community." "Don't apologize for other people's narrow-mindedness," Ezra replied. "We haven't done anything wrong. We've built something good together, a household that works, a partnership that benefits both of us, a life that makes us both happier than we were before. But if it's damaging your reputation—" "Abigail," Ezra interrupted, turning to face her fully. "What if we made it official? What if we got married, not because the town is forcing us to, but because what we've built together is worth protecting and celebrating?" The proposal hung in the air between them, not romantic in the conventional sense, but deeply meaningful in ways that transcended typical courtship rituals. And that's when the most incredible transformation began. "Are you asking me to marry you because you love me, or because it's the practical solution to a social problem?" Abigail asked, her directness characteristic of the honest communication that had always marked their relationship. Ezra thought carefully before answering. "Both, I think. I love the life we've built together, the way we understand each other, the partnership we've created. I love that you see me as more than my scars, and I hope I do the same for you. If that's not the same as the romantic love that other people talk about, maybe it's something better, love that's based on really knowing each other rather than just being attracted to an idealized version." Abigail smiled, the expression transforming her scarred face with genuine joy. "Ezra Steele, that's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. Yes, I'll marry you. Not because the town is pressuring us, but because you're right. What we've built is worth protecting." Their wedding took place 6 weeks later at the blacksmith shop, with the forge serving as the backdrop for vows that were as much about partnership and mutual respect as they were about love. The ceremony was small. Most of the town's respectable citizens found reasons to be elsewhere, but the guests who did attend understood that they were witnessing something special. Ezra's vows were simple and direct. "Abigail, I promise to see you as you really are, not as the world tries to define you by your scars. I promise to build our life together based on mutual respect, honest communication, and the understanding that strength comes from supporting each other through whatever challenges we face." Abigail's response was equally heartfelt. "Ezra, I promise to value the man you are, not just the protection you offer me. I promise to be your true partner in all things, to contribute my strength to our shared goals, and to remind you every day that you are worthy of love and respect, regardless of what marks your body carries." Years passed, and the Steele household became known throughout the territory not for the scandal of its origins, but for the example it set of a marriage based on genuine partnership and mutual respect. Ezra's business thrived with Abigail's organizational skills and customer relations expertise. Abigail found fulfillment in work that utilized her intelligence and capabilities rather than hiding them. Most importantly, they proved that love could grow from understanding, respect, and shared experience, rather than just physical attraction and social convenience. Their marriage became a testament to the idea that the strongest relationships are built not despite our scars, but because of our willingness to see beauty in imperfection and strength in survival. The woman who had been told her scars made her unfit for marriage became half of one of the territory's most successful partnerships, and the man who had believed his disfigurement condemned him to lifelong solitude learned that true intimacy comes from being fully known and completely accepted. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that real love sees past surface imperfections to the strength and beauty within, then you've found your home. Subscribe to Wild West Romance Stories for more tales of acceptance, partnership, and love that grows from mutual respect rather than conventional attraction. From blacksmith shops to frontier homesteads, Every story we tell proves that the strongest bonds are forged not in perfection, but in the courage to be vulnerable with someone who sees your scars and loves you more, not less, for having survived them. This is where damaged hearts learn to trust again, and where love writes its own definition of beauty.